Welcome, everyone, to our last session for 2020, Conversations with McGill Office Science and Society. With me today are Ada McVean, Emily Shore, and Jonathan Jarry. And 2020 is grinding to a halt. Thank goodness.
Yeah, crazy.
This was not one of our better years.
Well, it
So
made us see 2020.
before we start, let's wish everyone happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, whatever you are celebrating. And we do have something to celebrate because we have some pretty optimistic news about the vaccines. There are 3 of them. Results look good. We don't know all that much about the Russian one, but according to what they've published, and they actually have published in the Lancet, that also looks good. We have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine to look forward to. So things are kind of looking up. So what else to start with but the vaccine, of course. And not surprising, there already are controversies. The anti-vaxxers are out in full force. Some of it is so ridiculous that it's hardly worth mentioning. For example, this story that the lady who was vaccinated, the first one ever to be vaccinated, was actually an actress, and the nurse was also an actress. I mean, just so bizarre. I don't even know.
And the second person was named William Shakespeare, which is very bizarre.
It is. And something
such
about
effort
the,
to go through these
letters in his name, you can draw out the name of, Bill Gates, William, and something else about you mess around with the letters and gives you some info. Anyway, I don't even want to delve into that. It is just so ridiculous. So let's delve into the real science of it. And Jonathan, you've been looking into this, and we now have not only the press release, but we have basically all the information that we need to have in terms of making a sound judgment. So what do you make of the actual published data?
So Pfizer, in combination with BioNTech, they have an RNA-based vaccine for COVID-19 that has just been approved. Well, I shouldn't say approved. It's been authorized by Health Canada. I believe it was yesterday or 2 days ago. The FDA is deliberating this right now as we speak to see if they're going to authorize it as well, give it an emergency use authorization. In the UK, it's already been authorized. And so there was a very long report, 53 pages or so, by the FDA that was released earlier this week. And just this morning, the article was published by the New England Journal of Medicine. So all this information is now out there. It's a remarkable achievement, right? Because this disease is new. The virus did not exist. It sort of mutated into this current form, and we got it, about a year ago. The sequence was released very, very quickly by the Chinese. And now we have a vaccine. And according to this fairly massive phase 3 clinical trial in humans, in which, they did the analysis and they had to make sure that everybody who was in the analysis had received the vaccine exactly 2 months before they could do the analysis, because that was their timeline. So they have about 44,000 people in total, but for the analysis, it was about 37,000 people or so. I'm just looking at my notes here. In terms of safety, it's great. So again, it was half the people got the actual vaccine, half got a placebo, which was a saline injection. And it's 2 shots. They're 3 weeks apart, which will be challenging. There were mild side effects that were reported, and they're kind of similar to what you get with the flu vaccine, although they seem to be more common than what we typically see with the flu vaccine. So a reaction at the site of injection. So having a sore arm, for example, that was 5 in 6 people, so most people. Fatigue was reported in 2 out of 3. Headache, a little over half. Muscle pain, 2 in 5. Chills, 1 in 3. Joint pain, 1 in 4. Fever, 1 in 7. This is not worrisome from a safety standpoint, but I am concerned that if people get these side effects after the first dose, they might decide not to come back for the second dose.
It is also still scary to hear the list of those side effects when it's right in your face and we're going through it. You know what I mean? Like now when we get the flu vaccine every year and there's other shots, boosters, etc., for babies, all of these, there's always side effects. Like there's, but they're not in your face and published and like you have to critically analyze all the time. Like it's not automatic at this point. So it is more fearful.
So somebody tweeted something that was brilliant, which was a screenshot of a list of side effects. And they said, and the number of people who reported the side effect, and they said, if this were a disease, would you like to receive it to get these side effects? And of course, people go no. And this was actually a screenshot of the side effects reported by the people in that trial who got the placebo. Right? Because you got to remember, because you got to remember that you're getting an injection, and so your mind may be playing tricks on you. You might have, you might develop a fever because you caught the flu, a few days before, and it just, it just happens this way. So that's why these two arms are very important in a trial. You've got the vaccine, but you got a placebo, and you compare the two of them. There were some serious side effects in fewer than 0.5% of people. All in all, there was nothing really worrisome. And the thing to remember also is that when you're part of a clinical trial, disease progression does not miraculously stop, right? For example, there were, and I saw this horrible headline that said, I think it was something like 2 people died in Pfizer's COVID vaccine trial. And so this is not technically false. This is actually true, but without the proper context, Emily, like, how do you interpret this?
Exactly.
The vaccine killed these people, but no. So these two peeps. Did
I just?
That was interesting.
Broke. That was fun.
Jonathan. That was interesting. Your audio, 2 peeps, repeated for a good 20 seconds. But now you're back on.
You're back.
Okay.
I think
2 people died.
Must be the anti-vaxxers trying to interfere. And they're they're using 5G. They're blowing 5G at us. Anyway, having a reaction at the site of injection.
Okay.
Oh wait, I want to hear about the.
Having a reaction at the site of injection can actually be a good thing, because that shows that the immune system is working well. And interestingly enough, if you think back, that's how adjuvants for vaccines were originally discovered. That people who had an irritation at the site had better antibody response. That's when they started adding substances to the vaccine, the adjuvants, to trigger that reaction. So that that's not really a worry. Anyway, let's get to Ada for a minute here, because Ada, you're way down the list in terms of who would be getting the vaccine.
Yep. Healthy young person.
You're young and energetic and all of that, and plus
I don't know about energetic.
Well, you've even had the COVID. Okay. Would you have any reservation at all about taking the vaccine?
No, honestly, not really. We have regulatory agencies for a reason, and these regulatory agencies have given, not approved, as Jonathan said, but given like authorization for the use of this. I'm less concerned about getting the vaccine and more concerned about people's responses once they do start getting the vaccine. Because the thing is, every drug has side effects, and a vaccine is just a drug. Every single drug we take has side effects. And in the end, because we're giving out so many doses of this vaccine, there's going to be a lot of side effects, and people are going to start reporting these side effects, and it's going to be very alarming to a lot of people. But it's just a game of statistics, because you'll get these effects in a certain number of people who get the vaccine, and we're giving the vaccine to a huge number of people. So we're going to see a lot of side effects, but it's not even because they're especially common, it's just numbers.
Yeah, what I find quite irritating, especially, on my Facebook page is people who know nothing about vaccination, know nothing about viral infections, are talking about, how there's conspiracies and how the testing has not been done well enough and all of this. People who know nothing about anything. And it really is very irritating, when you see how much has gone into this, in terms of the research. And we've seen better cooperation among scientists than probably for any other research, except maybe for the Manhattan Project. And so this is a testimonial to science and what scientists can do when the backs are up against the wall. And then you have these people, who are totally scientifically illiterate, taking pot shots, at the researchers who have spent their lifetimes, working on these kind of things.
Well, I was also going to say what's irritating like you said, on your Facebook is when the non-science people start talking about conspiracy theories. But I find it just as, hard to listen to when these non-scientific people are also then spewing out scientific terms like mRNA or all these things as if they know, when they actually don't even know what they're talking about. And that's kind of what I don't want to say our friend, I was going to make a joke, but Montreal Healthy Girl, that type of thing, which also Jonathan can talk about, because I think she has a COVID video up, which has received how many views and hits and everything. Right. And I think you even got into like really some YouTube higher ups to kind of advise them, but this is really an issue.
But I mean, debating people like Montreal Healthy Girl also brings up an issue, because it's kind of like, are we going to bother debating the flat Earth people? Or are we going to debate the people who claim that we never landed on the moon, or that 9/11 was a CIA conspiracy? I mean, these things are just so absurd that we really shouldn't even be.
Or the president, that the election was rigged.
But I mean, the stuff that Montreal Healthy Girl spews out, and I must say that she does her spewing very well. She doesn't even take a breath. She can go on for half an hour with total nonsense. I don't know
the energy from those essential oils.
This or what?
Yeah, it's all so those energy, exactly.
If you just cut out caffeine, you too could have this energy.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Joe, that like debating them specifically is not something that I'm interested in. But I think that unfortunately, these ideas, they spread on social media. People, share them, and so they do need to be addressed. Like, for example,
they need to be exposed, but not debated. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, I mean,
QAnon is spreading to Europe.
Oh yeah.
It's really, and I don't think that you could think of something that is more absurd than the QAnon nonsense of pedophiles who are cannibals, slaughtering children to suck out their blood so that they can get adrenochrome out of it. I mean,
the QAnon ideas is almost like, in a game when you choose something out of a hat, and it's like then you string them together to form the most like absurd sentence.
Mad Lib.
It's one of those things. Like it's like, here's the pedophiles. Let's take cannibalism. Like let's put them together. That's what that is. Yeah.
But the thing is, it's very. Oh, go ahead, Ada.
You go, Jonathan.
I was just gonna say, like, it's because we're in this period of like peak anxiety, and people are feeling that they're lacking control in their lives, and governments are kind of clamping down, and we got all these public health measures. Like I understand. I mean, I know how absurd this all is, but I understand why people gravitate toward these ideas, because it makes them feel empowered. It makes them feel like they are the heroes on a journey. So it's unfortunately, as absurd as these things are, they do provide reassurance to people, but they also cause a lot of damage.
Well, one legitimate issue that is raised is that the Pfizer trial and Moderna trial were 3 months. Now, 3 months in terms of history of vaccine development is not a long time. But again, we're looking at a situation here that is essentially, in our lifetime, of course, is unprecedented, and can't afford to wait for 2 years, without doing anything. So yeah, it's been only 3 months, but also historically, when real problems crop up with vaccines, it is almost immediately after. It's
exactly.
It's not years after. So we would have seen serious side effects already. 3 months is shorter than we've seen before, but I think it is reasonable, and I don't think that that's a valid sort of excuse not to get the vaccine, because it's only been under 3 months.
But like Ada said, Jonathan, you were off at that point, but it will be interesting the next few months as the vaccines start to roll out. What's going to be making the news? It's going to be all the side effects that people are experiencing, and it's going to be noisy.
Already, I mean, we're seeing, and I mean, this is credible in a sense. I mean, 2 people who were vaccinated in the UK had some form of severe allergic reaction. And so now the UK regulator is saying, well, people who have a history of serious allergies should not take this vaccine. And of course, that's, it spins the rumor mill. And now people are going, oh my God, it's causing these. But the thing is, like, when you look at the data from the trial, Yeah, there were a few people, not a lot. There were a few people in each group who reported some kind of allergic type reaction. There were a few more in the vaccine group than in the placebo group, but not that many more. And so the thing is, like right now, we're dealing with so little data that it's very easy to take that and just run with it in fear before you know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
It's also just hilarious to me that the same people that would decry, we can't take this because of these serious allergic reactions, they take medications every single day that other people also have allergic reactions to. Like the medications I take every single day, some people are allergic to. People are allergic to things. That doesn't mean it's a functional, it's not, sorry, that doesn't mean it is not a functional medicine that will work perfectly well. You don't take things you're allergic to.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, and there's also this repeated idea out there that the number of people who have died from the coronavirus is such a small percentage of the population, right? 0.024% or whatever it is, which is true, right? And they're using that to justify, well, why should we be injecting these toxins into everyone when the risk is so small, when you only have a 0.024% death rate, which of course is a totally ridiculous way of looking at it, because it's not the general population you have to look at it, it's the people who are afflicted with the disease. You need to look at the death rate there, which is pretty significant. And all these people who are saying that, you know, they're worried about the side effects of the vaccine, well, I would say that the infection with this virus has some pretty devastating side effects. So you got to weigh one against the other.
Yeah,
anyway,
preventing deaths is not the only role of medicine either.
That's right.
Even though the death rate of this virus might not be that high, it's miserable. Trust me, I had it. It's definitely the sickest I've ever been. And even though I'm fine, I'm not experiencing any long-term effects as far as I know, I don't want to do it again. And nobody should. It was horrible. We shouldn't, if we have a way to prevent people going through that, even if most people are going to go through it without problems, we should utilize it.
Vaccines are very interesting because I was interviewing somebody last night who was quoting somebody whose name I forget, who has a very interesting way of putting it. Apparently she was saying that vaccines are where public health measures meet the personal flesh, right? It's kind of like it's where the rubber hits the road. So you can have all these big ideas about public health. You can even be in favor of public health measures. But then when somebody comes at you with a syringe and they want to penetrate your skin and inject you with something, that's where a lot of people start kind of freaking out. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. These measures that we talk about, they need to be applied. And this is what happens. We have a vaccine, we need to vaccinate people.
People with potassium chloride. You know, we're injecting people with the vaccine.
I know, but a lot of people are, you see there's RNA in the vaccine. Oh my God, what is this going to do? And as we know, the genetic literacy of the general population is not very high. And so people can very easily, like all the fears that people have about GMOs can be transposed into this vaccine because there's genetic material in it.
They're already out there with those arguments, you know.
Well, that's what John, can you actually explain why the duplicating of the genome and everything, people are talking about that because the RNA? I just find
are they talking about duplicating the genome?
Or I don't know, not
or integrating into it or disrupting it, or
they're talking about us becoming genetically modified organisms,
right?
Because the RNA is somehow going to incorporate into the DNA, which of course is ridiculous.
Yeah, so it is highly, highly, highly implausible. It's practically impossible, and here's why. So first of all, I think it's important to mention that we have RNA in our bodies, right? RNA is not a foreign molecule. It's one of the pillars of life. So we have our DNA. Parts of it get transcribed into these very fragile molecules called RNA molecules, messenger RNA molecules specifically, and these are the instructions to make proteins. And so the DNA that we have, our genome is I'm going to put aside mitochondrial DNA, but our genome is inside the nucleus of our cell, which is like the yolk of an egg, if you will. And not everything can go inside that nucleus. You have to have certain signals on a molecule so that it can be transported inside the nucleus. And the messenger RNA that is in that, Pfizer vaccine and all of these RNA vaccines, they don't have that. They don't have the means to even go inside the nucleus. So they never come close to our DNA. They are just one more RNA molecule that ends up inside of our cells and that the ribosomes look at and go, oh, well, I guess I need to make this protein now. And that's that. And then even if this RNA molecule could go inside of our nucleus, which it can't.
Oh, no.
I just muted something. I don't know.
Same thing.
There. Okay. No, now
you're
talk.
back.
Okay, you're
Silence
better.
here.
You're better.
What's happening?
It's
I know it's the wrong microphone, but I'll just say this very quickly. So yes, some viruses carry these molecules that will allow for reverse transcription, but not this vaccine and not this virus. And if you're worried about the RNA from this coronavirus affecting your genome, if you get the virus, you will get this RNA in your cells. So it's completely it's nonsense.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes a little learning is a dangerous thing.
I'll be back.
Because people get these terms. I mean, I've had the questions which refer to retroviruses, where actually you can get reverse transcription and you can get the RNA stimulating DNA production. But the fact is that here we're not talking about retrovirus. I mean, this is a totally different kind of virus. So it just makes no sense at all. But to someone who doesn't know, you can kind of conjure up a picture that seems to make sense. And
I like that. A little learning is a dangerous thing.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny to me too, because a not insignificant part of my master's research is basically trying to make RNA and DNA stable enough to go into bodies. Because if they give you this vaccine and this mRNA, kind of, what's the fear? That it'll just like escape and run rogue around your body, right? But your body is so good at breaking down RNA. That's what makes my research difficult, because we have to come up with ways to modify RNA to make it stable so that we can use it as a therapeutic. But unmodified RNA is so delicate. Your body can break it down so quickly. So this idea that this RNA can like run rogue around your body and wreak havoc, not a chance. If that was true, I wouldn't have a master's project.
That's
so
a very
actually,
good article idea.
Maybe Ada, maybe you can just quickly explain how the messenger RNA that is being used in the Pfizer vaccine is actually arrived at.
Oh, how it's made? Well, it's made in a different way than how I make RNA. I use an automated oligonucleotide synthesizer. We call it a gene machine. It basically makes DNA and RNA from the individual nucleotide bases with some chemical modifications. But the way that I believe, Jonathan, you can probably help me on this, the way that they're making the mRNA for this vaccine would be through cloning, right?
I'm not super familiar about this, but I can comment on the modified bases, which I think will freak out a lot of people unnecessarily. I can comment now. So you might have seen that this the Pfizer RNA vaccine has it's a modified nucleoside RNA, and so of course
which
people
one? I haven't read the reports yet.
Well, Ada
just got so excited that I'm not sure if I'm so happy. It's like the happiest moment of your day right there.
It's probably one pseudouridine. But anyway, so if you read the report, if you read in the New England Journal of Medicine, all that kind of stuff, you will see that it has modified bases. And of course, what people are going to go and think is, genetically modified organism is going to turn us into GMOs. No. So the issue with RNA vaccines, because RNA vaccines are not new. I mean, we keep saying it's a new technology, but that's not really accurate. It's been going on for 30 years, right? So scientists have been working on these for 30 years.
But they haven't been used?
So none has been licensed in humans up until now.
They're actually quite widely used in veterinary medicine.
Yeah, that's what I read. So, but not in humans. And so one of the issues that they were dealing with is that when these RNA vaccines would be injected, they would often create a very undesirable immune response. So the body was somehow not dealing with it very well. And the way in which they got around this was by realizing that, so RNA is made up of 4 chemical bases, or 4 letters, if you will, A, U, C, G. And these bases can be modified in the body naturally, right? So that's just part of how life works. So you can add a little molecule on top of one of these bases, or change an atom there, and all that kind of stuff. So there are over 100 modifications, I think, of these bases. And so scientists finally figured out how to use the right modified base in this RNA molecule as part of a vaccine to not get this effect, so that you are actually producing the protein and developing an immune reaction against the protein, so that you will be protected against the virus, but you will not get this undesirable, immune response from the RNA itself. And so it's not clear exactly which bases Pfizer has used. I think it's proprietary, but from the New England Journal of Medicine piece and from other pieces that I've read, it seems that it's mainly 1-pseudouridine. So it's a slightly different version of that U, one of those 4 letters. So that's what it means when they say that they're using modified bases in the vaccine. These bases are naturally occurring in the body. They just found the right combination for that RNA to do its job and to protect us, essentially.
At this point, I think we should point out that the first ever functioning gene machine was made right here in the Automass building at
Is it
McGill.
still outside your office?
Yes,
Yeah.
right across from our office. And that was by Kelvin Ogilvie, who then went on to be a senator in Canada. And now in those days, I think he made a 20-piece oligonucleotide. Today, I'm not sure, Ada, how many synthetically are they up to?
Oh, are they up to? Thousands.
Yeah.
I make 27, but that's only because that's my unique application.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, there are thousands you can make, right?
What year was that, Joe? The gene machine?
That would have been 40 years ago.
Wow, amazing.
Roughly, yeah. I mean, that was a huge thing. And now, of course, you have gene machines all over the place, and yeah, like I mean, I'm not sure how many we have here. Ada, you have any idea?
Ooh, there's 4 in this lab, and there's at least 2 other DNA labs, so probably 10, I guess, 10 to 20.
Right. And what do they cost roughly?
Oh, that I don't know, because the wonderful thing about them is that they last forever. So the 2 that I work on are from the 80s. So there are photos of my PI, my professor who's supervising me, working on the exact same gene machine I work on today, because they are really robust.
That's
Right.
cool.
Hey, it's handed down from generation to generation. It's like a wedding gift,
It really is.
Okay, let's quickly shift on to some other things. Jonathan, you've been working on the humidifier business, and a lot of questions come up about this, especially whether or not we know anything about the survival of this virus indoors, depending on the humidity.
Yeah, I haven't really looked too much into humidity versus COVID. This is still something that I wrote a whole article about the seasonality of viruses, right? Why do some viruses make us sick in the winter, but not in the summer? Others, it's the opposite. Others are year round. And there are a lot of hypotheses and a lot of sort of partial answers to the question. It's still not clear the role that humidity plays in spreading viruses. It seems that it is playing a role. It may have something to do with, if the air is very dry and you're expelling particles of wet, when you're speaking, what was it? Wetly?
Moistly.
Right. You're speaking moistly. And if the air is very, very dry, it will kind of suck out the water off of your particles, your little droplets, and it will make them lighter. And so the virus can sort of hang out in the air as an aerosol. But this does not happen with every virus, right? So it's very complicated. But the business about humidifiers came about because I was teaching a class at the University of Ottawa, and one of the students decided to do a very quick presentation on the science of humidifiers. And that person was saying, I couldn't really find much there. It doesn't seem like they work. And I was generally curious because I had never given this a second thought. I have been using a humidifier for years without really questioning, does it really work? I mean, I do have a hygrometer which measures humidity, and it seems like it does work. But are they safe? And I started to dig into this, and I realized that there were still a lot of unknowns about how good the quality of the air is when you're using certain types of humidifiers. So many of us are familiar with the good old warm mist boils the water kind of humidifier. It's like a big tea kettle. And those do not appear to emit a lot of very, very small particles, because what happens is that when you put tap water inside, that tap water has minerals dissolved in it. And those minerals, they end up caking around the heating element, so you don't breathe them in. The air that is released does not have a lot of these particles in it. It's just air that has a higher water content. But a type of humidifier that has become a lot more popular in recent years is the sonic, what was it called? Not supersonic. Ultrasonic. Thank you very much.
Ultrasonic. I have one. It's shaped like a frog.
Yeah, I also have one too. It's not shaped like a frog because I'm an adult.
That's unfortunate.
But these little gizmos, they're very, they seem like they're perfect, right? Because they're very quiet. They're very efficient. They don't use a lot of electricity. They have a tiny little vibrating element that vibrates very, very quickly. And so it turns the liquid water into water vapor. And the issue, though, is that there have been a number of studies recently, although that goes all the way back to the 80s, really. But there have been some recent studies, including one from the University of Alberta earlier this year, where now we have these amazing sensors that can detect particulate matter in the air. And when they test, even like the ones that are recommended by Consumer Reports as being best buys, they test these ultrasonic humidifiers, they detect a lot of particulate matter, calcium, magnesium, all kinds of stuff that is present in the water. And so the question is, what does this do to our health when you breathe this in, night after night? And we don't really know. Those minerals are thought to be safe in humans, but what are the long-term effects of breathing that in, every night for years and years? It's not clear. One solution to that, if you have an ultrasonic humidifier, is to use distilled water. But there's a problem there, because distilled water does not have those minerals in there. You just take the water, you leave the minerals behind, and then you recondense the water elsewhere. You can do this at home, but from what I've seen, it takes hours and hours to get. It's just not practical if you want to use a humidifier every night. You can't do this at home. So you can go buy this water, but you would have to buy about 25 liters in plastic bottles of distilled water every week to run your humidifier overnight.
That's expensive.
It's not that expensive.
Crazy.
It's like $10 a week.
Time consuming.
So it's $40 a month if you want to use distilled water every night in your humidifier.
$10 a week is almost what, $500 a year? That's more than
less than
if somebody told me I had to spend $500 a year to have a humidifier, I wouldn't buy one.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that these ultrasonic humidifiers are dangerous necessarily. I am saying that concerns have been raised by good scientists who are looking into this, and I have stopped using mine because I'm just unsure about all this. So I think what seems to be safer are those warm mist humidifiers, but even those they have been a lot of bacteria are coming off of them. You wouldn't think so because it's boiling the water. But you can detect a lot of bacteria coming out of this. Most of these bacteria are harmless, but if you have allergies, if you have asthma, they can exacerbate these conditions. So it was very interesting because when you think of humidifiers and they're sold in drugstores, you just assume that they would be safe and be perfectly okay. But when you look at the data on them, it really makes you think about the kind of air that you're breathing in. And Ada, you were mentioning when I was talking about this with you, that coupling this with an air purifier might actually take care of the issue. And that's a very interesting, potential solution. And actually there is at least one model that I was sent. I was sent a link to this. I was not sent the actual thing. Dyson makes a humidifier. It's not clear if it's an ultrasonic one or if it's a different thing. And I spoke to them and it wasn't clear from them, from their end either. But it has an air purifier integrated inside of it, so that the air that comes out is both humid and purified. It has HEPA filters in it. It costs about $1,000. So I don't think that's going to be the solution for most households.
Some of the old-fashioned ones, the first ones that came out, the drum humidifiers, where you had this large drum with a sponge on it that rotated through the water. And the
my parents had one, I remember.
Yep, yeah. My grandparents.
Those actually were good. Those were good.
Okay.
It was massive.
The only thing you had to do was to make sure that the tank was kept clean, so that you don't get bacterial buildup in there. But that was easy to do with vinegar.
But the low budget alternative.
You didn't have at all the problem with the white dust, which is just the calcium magnesium carbonate settling on everything. which is the problem if you inhale them. So novelty isn't always good, you know. Some of the old technology works, and those drum kinds, I don't even know if you can still get them. I haven't seen them. But
They're not common, if anything.
No.
I don't know if you can get them, but you can DIY it at home. It's the equivalent of taking a towel, get the towel wet, wring it out, and hang it over a chair in your bedroom. The water will evaporate through the night.
Yeah.
You end up with more moisture in the air.
Put a fan.
Oh, it's not very efficient at all, but it's better than nothing if you don't want to use your humidifier now, but you feel your air's a bit dry.
Anyway, let's get to really important things, like potato latkas.
Are you gonna bring me some?
Today is the first day of Hanukkah, and traditionally, the food that is served are potato latkes, fried. And there's question about history of these, which is somewhat of a mystery. We'll leave that. But about which kind of potatoes are the best, whether you should be using russet potatoes or Idaho potatoes, and of course, what you should fry them in. So let's start here with someone who has some semi-expertise in this area. Emily.
Mr. Potato Head. Oh, I thought you were going to bring out Mr. Potato Head.
Yeah. In making latkes, I have to say, we were going to make latkes this week, and it was like too putchky. Like it was too much for us to do with work and everything. So my mother is making them. But I actually, I was thinking about it yesterday. I guess you use olive oil, right, to fry?
Well, I mean, traditionally it should be olive oil because, you know, history has it that that's the oil that was used by the Maccabees in the miracle oil that was alight for 8 days when there was only enough oil for 1 day. So that's why actually potatoes don't really have anything to do with Hanukkah. It's the oil that makes the...
No, and it could actually, first of all, latkes are basically hash browns. They're bigger hash browns. And there's lots of like we were looking in like Bon Appetit magazine, there's lots of different ways, you know, you could have beets and leeks, and it could be any root vegetable, and you could get all crafty and like, do you want yours fluffy? I was watching something, I heard a good tip the other day that using egg whites make it crispy, you know, versus, you know, not with the yolk, which makes it more fluffy, like a cake. There's lots of technique there. And then also I saw, you know, what type of person are you? What do you put on your latke? Is it like smoked salmon and cream cheese? Or do you go the more like Nutella route? Like there's lots of different things. But Joe, are you making? Yeah, just like
we will give it a shot. Yeah.
And also there's
of course, the question is also what you fry them in. Olive oil, actually, the smoke point of olive oil is not the best. It's better to use canola oil. Of course, traditionally, what was used was schmaltz, which is rendered chicken or goose fat, and
which I bet you some very good restaurants, like the more delicacy type of restaurants, still use that.
Well, that certainly makes it taste better. And then there's, like you said, the question what you put into it, and also how you grate it. You know, some people grate it large pieces, some almost powder it. And then there's also the question of whether or not you scrape your blood into it, you know, when you... that adds
blood, sweat, and tears,
extra protein and extra flavor. And some people actually, believe it or not, make it out of mashed potato. So they don't grate it. They actually bake the potato first, mash the potato, and add some potato starch to it to stick it all together. And
I like the grating because I like when it gets crispy, I guess.
Yeah.
But with also it's not, sorry. Yeah.
Just with the mashed potatoes, that's almost close to the British bubble and squeak, which is like leftover roast potatoes. You mash up, add cabbage, and fry it like a patty. Make that all the time.
Yeah. And of course, with latkes, you put onions into it.
That's yummy too. But it's not only latkes. You know, again, the emphasis is on the oil, right? So it's really any oily thing. I was signed up for a Zoom thing yesterday. We're making sufganiyot, which are the donuts. The donuts, like again, fried in oil, and they could be large, they could be small. A lot of times they're jelly filled, and those also you could put with Nutella and anything. I mean, you could go from the very basic to just, with the powdered sugar to the gourmet, kind of like beaver tails. Those would probably also be acceptable.
When you look at all the recipes out there on the internet, of which there are thousands and thousands, they mostly agree that russet potatoes are the ones to use. And that's because they are high in starch. And, as you remember from your elementary school days when you used to make glue in school, right? By taking starch and mixing it with water. So that's exactly what you want. You want it to stick together. You don't want it to fall apart when you're frying. So that's why potatoes that are high in starch are better. And the russet is the one that is starch.
Can we use an avocado oil to fry or not really?
You can. I mean, why would you want to? It's a very expensive oil.
Yeah.
Think of all the health benefits, Joe.
That's what I was thinking. Make it healthier.
I think when we're talking about frying latkes, we can forget about talking about health benefits. You do this for tradition, and you do it for the fact that it tastes pretty good. I mean, I like it with applesauce. I cannot link Nutella with potato latkes. This is blasphemy.
I could do smoked salmon. That would be good. Like a little, cream cheese or sour cream and smoked salmon or something. Yeah.
I like putting parsnips inside mine. Not on top, but inside. Parsnips. Very good.
Welcome to a new recipe channel. I will have recipes in the
any
comment
root
section
vegetable.
Well, parsnips are the key to chicken soup for me. I mean, you load up chicken soup with parsnip. That's when you really get the flavor.
So wait, the first night of Hanukkah is tonight, and Christmas. Okay, no, it's basically in 2 weeks tomorrow, right? The 25th. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Christmas doesn't really have any traditional food associated with it. It's just any food, right? You have
Christmas.
Well,
Christmas absolutely has traditional food.
I guess.
Plum pudding, figgy pudding.
Oh,
Christmas pudding.
Yeah.
Christmas pudding.
Yeah.
And then fruitcake. Fruitcake.
Yeah, that
fruit cake.
But
I don't know if people actually make fruitcake, or it's the same fruitcake that keeps circulating over and over again, right?
I actually like fruitcake. I might be the only one.
Me too. I love fruitcake.
Okay, yes. Okay, Jonathan, we can share. We'll eat everyone else's fruitcake.
We'll start a club.
Is there significance with that food? Is there actual significance from the story of Christmas, or it just evolved into this thing that people eat?
I mean, Christmas is already, it's a bizarre combination of traditions, right? Because there's the Christian legend of Jesus, but he was allegedly born in the summer, and then it was a Yuletide, which was a pagan holiday, and it kind of smushed those two things together, kind of like Easter. So it's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah,
I think most people eat turkey on Christmas, though. So
there's this recent archaeological story that's been all over the news about supposedly finding Jesus's childhood home in Jerusalem, or in Nazareth. It's a very interesting little story, and published by a real archaeologist named of Dark in England, who has been excavating. Or been part of the excavation of this house below an existing church in Nazareth, and they claim that this was Jesus's childhood home. What is the claim? That as described in the Bible, Jesus's father was a craftsman. He is actually not described as a carpenter. That is also part of the legend. He's described as a craftsman. And when they look at this house, that they've dug out some of it, it was very expertly put together. The stones were very well crafted.
Of course, there was only one crasman in Nazareth.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say correlation does not imply causation.
This is the link. This is the link. That they found these stones well crafted, and Jesus' father was a craftsman, and therefore 2 + 2 is 5. And this was Jesus's home when he was a young boy.
Sure.
Anyway, if anyone wants to read up on this, I mean, you just Google, archaeological find Jesus Dark, which is the name of the archaeologist, and it will come up. It makes for an interesting story, but I don't think there's very much science here.
So what do we think? I mean, we look back at 2020, and this was all, COVID dominated, and how science it was representative of science works and science changes and actions or whatever. But like in wrapping up now, as this is our last 2020 COVID and more, and we're going into 2021. I mean, what do we think? No one can predict what's going to happen. We could never have predicted the pandemic, but what do we think is going to be happening in the world of science? I mean, probably the evolution of the vaccine and what's going to transpire from that.
I think all we can predict is that what's going to happen is unpredictable.
And hopefully better.
It will be a better year psychologically anyway. Yeah.
I think it's going to be a rough next few months, though. I do.
Yeah,
as the vaccine rolls out.
I'm going to make a claim here, though. You know that hockey, of course, suffered. We didn't have live audiences, spectators, and Dallas beat Tampa Bay in the Stanley Cup final. But I'm going to claim that actually Tampa won.
Yes, that's how this works, Joe, as you know.
Only in America, though. That only works because there were no Canadian teams in the final.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, my biggest concern is now with the vaccine rollout, because vaccination will take place over many months. It'll be interesting to see how loud the anti-vaccination crowd gets, what kinds of bizarre claims that they make, and how much sway they get over people who are hesitant to vaccinate. That will be playing out in real time. And it could have a real, very negative impact on community immunity, or it could also turn out to be like a tempest in a teapot.
Yeah. Well, you already mentioned the problem, the logistical problem of getting people to come back 3 weeks later to get the vaccine.
Yeah. So based on the data from Pfizer, I mean, the first dose seems to offer some protection, which is encouraging. But they're really saying that you need both doses to achieve the best.
I think there's going to be a significant number of people who, for various reasons, will not come back for the second dose.
But there's also going to create like this kind of division, not division, like a divider in society where there's going to be the waves of people that are vaccinated and others that are still waiting, right? And even though I think the first and second group are the healthcare professionals and the elderly in the long-term homes, I mean, we're at the bottom, right? But hopefully that can maybe start to ease up some of the restrictions a little bit once those vulnerable populations and more, frontline are protected.
But
I'm curious about that.
That might also fan the flames of social discord because people who tend to lean libertarian, for example, are really afraid of the government saying, "Well, where's your vaccination card? If you don't have it, you can't get in." And so that might actually make them even angrier. So we'll have to see how this
we'll have different classes of people.
Essentially,
vaccinated, twice vaccinated, once vaccinated, never vaccinated.
And like the vaccinated can probably, McGill might put out something. I don't know, vaccinated people, both vaccines can come into work again. We have no idea. I have no idea what this looks like.
It is important to remember, though, that just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean you can stop wearing a mask. We've already started seeing initial news reports about that, but it's going to be because especially people don't want to wear masks in general, but at least now we've gotten into the routine, we've gotten used to it. The societal pressure is massive to wear one. But once people start getting vaccinated, they're going to want to wear them even less. But there's nothing about the vaccine prevents it from infecting your body. It doesn't prevent it from being in your body. And if
we don't know. That's what we don't know. And it's a very important note to make. The people in the Pfizer vaccine trial, when they determined the 95% efficacy of it, it was because people had symptoms of COVID and they got a lab test, a PCR test, swab, and they tested positive. So as they themselves admit, they do not know if the vaccine is good at preventing transmission of the virus. It doesn't mean that it can't do it. It's just that we don't know at the moment.
Well, so far, none of these studies have released data about their periodic testing during the 3 months. So we really don't know whether or not, or just how many people would have tested positive without symptoms, which is really the key. So anyway, there's a lot still that we don't know. Okay,
we do have, but in conclusion, a very important point on the chat. We have a message saying Cantor's Bakery in NDG has great latkas, and Brian like sour cream on them.
Are we doing publicity for specific shops now?
Well, no, but the Cantor's got a shout out.
Others are
why not give it?
available.
Sour cream is acceptable. All right,
Yeah.
let's wind things up here. But first, recommendations for what people can watch on Netflix or whatever over the holidays.
I've never
Emily.
been more grateful. I've
Huh?
never been more grateful for streaming services now. I don't celebrate Christmas. So for me, it was all about the people and the parties and the, the holiday, stuff. That the only thing now that feels festive is what's happening on my television, really. So there are many good new shows that I've been watching. The Flight Attendant on HBO Max. That was very good. I also finished The Undoing, which just finished last week. Your Honor, which just started. But then there's also a bunch of Christmas ones tonight. I'm not receiving any money from them, but if you like musicals and you like Christmas, Broadway is doing like some musical holiday things on NBC, and that should be good. So I'm excited for that.
I
All
will
right,
say,
there's certainly stuff out there to watch.
if you have positive memories of the 80s, Cobra Kai on Netflix, which is the Karate Kid sequel, is actually surprisingly good. It's really good.
Oh, we should watch I should watch first, like side by side. That would be good.
Watch the first movie first, and then you can watch the TV show.
Yeah.
I know
There
I'm a
are
little
movies that hold up over time and movies that don't. I rewatched. Well, I've now rewatched many times Goldfinger, which is my favorite James Bond movie.
Oh, there's a scene in there. Is that the one with the scene in the barn where he kind of put the moves on somebody who doesn't want moves to be put on her?
Pussy Galore. I don't know how they ever got away with it.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah,
she is. Yeah. Yes.
Wait, Ada.
And of course, there's the great scene in there when Sean Connery, who of course was James Bond, all the others were actors playing James Bond.
Sure.
So where he is spread eagled on this large slab of gold with Goldfinger and his laser, and it starts to cut through and then Bond says, "Goldfinger, what do you expect me to die?" And he says, "Mr. Bond," or he says, "Goldfinger, what do you expect me to do?" And Goldfinger says, "Mr. Bond, I expect you to die." That's one of the great scenes. And of course, obviously, he doesn't. There's a nice out there. So anyway, Goldfinger.
Ada, you said you were late to the game with something.
Yeah, I'm late to the game, but I'm finally watching Umbrella Academy because Elliot Page is coming out. Got me to watch it, and it's actually really good. I'm not sure why I didn't watch it earlier.
Yeah, I have not seen that yet. I have a list.
There's always Schitt's Creek.
Not my cup of tea.
Great Canadian show.
Keep watching is my recommendation for that show. Then you get into it. Yeah, I loved it. That was great.
All right. So that's
Okay.
our wrap up for the year. We've done everything. We've talked about vaccines. We've talked about humidifiers. We talked about what to do in the kitchen with latkas, and finally even gave you recommendations on what to watch. And we'll be back with you next year, as unbelievable as it is. It will be next year, and hopefully we'll have some more optimistic stuff to talk about with vaccines. And certainly there'll be more interesting things that have cropped up in the world of science. So we'll see you then. And for now, again, happy holidays to everyone. Wishing you all the best for, believe it or not, 2021.
Safe holiday season.
Bye.